10 countries that receives the most U.S. aid. The U.S. provides billions of dollars in foreign aid every year, but where does it go? Which nations receive the most money and why do they need it? Some use it for their military, while others rely on it for basic necessities. However, with recent policy changes, many countries face unexpected financial struggles. Could cutting U.S. aid cause problems around the world? Tune in as we look at the top 10 nations receiving U.S. aid. 10. Syria. Syria's war has left 90% of Syrians in poverty, making international aid essential for millions. The U.S. gave $870 million in assistance in 2023, which supported food programs, health, and clean water initiatives. This accounted for about 25% of all foreign aid sent to Syria. President Donald Trump ordered a 90-day freeze on U.S. foreign aid on January 20th, 2025, immediately stopping humanitarian efforts. 6 NGOs that provide clean water and sanitation services in northwest Syria have shut down, impacting 430,000 people. With aid suspended, Sarmata clinics have also closed, cutting off food for 35,000 people. Meanwhile, reduced funding to camps such as Al-Hol and Raj has raised concerns about disease outbreaks and security risks. As the U.S. pulls back, Syria's worsening crisis is putting millions in even greater danger. 9. Nigeria. In 2023, Nigeria received approximately $1 billion in U.S. foreign assistance, with over $600 million going toward health programs like malaria prevention, HIV treatment, and vaccines. However, on January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed an order to freeze all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days to review whether it benefits the American people. Nigerian lawmakers quickly responded by raising the 2025 health budget by $200 million to compensate for the loss of U.S. aid. This extra funding will help pay for vaccines and disease treatment. However, many question how this will affect Nigeria's healthcare system, especially in areas that depend on U.S.-funded programs. The suspension has also sparked a debate about finding new ways to fund healthcare and reducing reliance on foreign aid. This situation shows how sudden changes in international aid can create serious challenges, highlighting the need for stronger healthcare systems supported by local resources. 8. Yemen. 17 million Yemenis need humanitarian aid, but U.S. support has now been cut off. In 2023, Yemen received $730 million in U.S. foreign aid, which funded food programs, healthcare, and clean water projects. On January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed a 90-day freeze on all U.S. foreign aid, cutting off a critical support system. The United Nations was already struggling to meet Yemen's humanitarian needs, reaching only 38% of its 2023 aid goal, which forced major cuts to relief programs. The freeze also halted U.S.-funded demining efforts. Norwegian People's Aid, which was awarded $41 million in 2024 to remove landmines, has laid off 1,700 workers, affecting nearly 500,000 people. With aid frozen and resources running out, Yemen is facing worsening hunger, illness, and instability, putting millions at risk. 7. Afghanistan. In 2023, Afghanistan received approximately $1.09 billion in U.S. foreign aid, mainly for emergency food programs and humanitarian assistance. But on January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order freezing all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days to review its impact on American interests. This decision has been devastating for Afghanistan, as over 9 million people depend on U.S.-funded healthcare. The United Nations warns that without this funding, Afghanistan could see 1,200 more maternal deaths and 109,000 unintended pregnancies between 2025 and 2028 due to disrupted reproductive health care. Economists estimate that this aid freeze could shrink Afghanistan's economy by about 7%, worsening poverty and instability in a country already facing major challenges. The suspension has also stopped U.S. disaster assistance response teams, DARTs, from working in Afghanistan, making it harder to deliver urgent humanitarian help. This sudden loss of aid highlights Afghanistan's heavy dependence on foreign assistance and raises serious concerns about the safety of millions during this crisis. 6. Somalia. Somalia is facing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. More than 3 million people have been displaced, and millions more are suffering from drought and famine. In 2023, the U.S. provided $1.1 billion in foreign aid to fund essential services like food, medicine, and clean water. But in January 2025, President Donald Trump signed an order to freeze all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days. The freeze has forced aid groups to stop crucial programs, leaving thousands without emergency food and medical care. USAID had budgeted $125 million for Somalia in 2025, but that funding is now on hold, delaying future relief efforts. Beyond the humanitarian impact, this loss of aid is expected to shrink Somalia's economy by more than 3%, worsening poverty and instability in a country already struggling with terrorism and natural disasters. With aid cut off, Somalia faces an even greater crisis as millions who relied on U.S. assistance are now left without help. 5. Ethiopia. Ethiopia has long depended on American foreign aid to fund health programs, food security, and humanitarian assistance. In 2023, it received $1.5 billion in U.S. aid, much of which went toward combating malnutrition, disease outbreaks, and refugee crises. But in January 2025, President Donald Trump suspended all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days, putting Ethiopia's most vulnerable people at risk. Organizations that provide nutrition programs for over 400,000 refugees near the South Sudan border have already stopped their work, making the hunger crisis even worse. The halt also threatens Ethiopia's progress against HIV/AIDS. Before the freeze, Ethiopia was close to meeting global health goals, with most HIV-positive people receiving treatment and antiretroviral therapy. Now, gaps in treatment could erase years of progress. As the need for humanitarian aid grows, the suspension raises concerns about Ethiopia's stability and the long-term impact on millions who depend on U.S. assistance. 4. Egypt. Egypt has been a leading recipient of American military aid for decades, receiving about $1.5 billion annually. Of this, $1.3 billion is set aside for military assistance, making Egypt a key U.S. ally in the region. In January 2025, President Donald Trump paused most U.S. foreign aid for 90 days, but Egypt and Israel were unaffected. This exemption highlights Egypt's importance, especially in stabilizing Gaza and protecting the Suez Canal, a key global trade route. Despite concerns about human rights, Egypt continues to receive full military aid. In September 2024, the Biden administration removed human rights conditions from $225 million in aid, prioritizing Egypt's role in regional security. This situation reflects an ongoing challenge for the U.S., balancing strategic alliances with pressure to address human rights issues. 3. Jordan. Did you know that U.S. aid makes up more than 2% of Jordan's economy? In 2024, the U.S. provided Jordan $1.72 billion to support the economy, security, and refugee programs. But in January 2025, President Donald Trump suspended all foreign aid for 90 days to evaluate its importance. Unlike Egypt and Israel, Jordan was not exempt from the freeze, raising concerns about its economic stability and security. Jordan relies on American aid to support its economy and care for large refugee populations. Without aid, experts worry that funding shortages could affect essential services. Trump has also said that future aid might depend on Jordan's willingness to cooperate with U.S. policies, including controversial proposals such as relocating Palestinian refugees from Gaza, a plan Jordan has strongly opposed. 2. Israel. In fiscal year 2025, the United States continued its yearly commitment of $3.3 billion in foreign military financing, FMF, to Israel, showing strong U.S. support for Israel's security. The funding is part of a 10-year agreement signed in 2016, which guarantees Israel $38 billion in military assistance from 2019 to 2028. Beyond FMF, the U.S. has also provided significant weapons and defense systems. In January 2025, an $8 billion arms deal was proposed, including advanced missiles and artillery to strengthen Israel's defense capabilities amid ongoing regional tensions. Even though most U.S. foreign aid was paused in early 2025, military aid to Israel remained unchanged, reinforcing its strategic importance to the U.S. in the Middle East. This ongoing support highlights the close U.S.-Israel relationship, which is focused on maintaining Israel's military strength in an unstable region. 1. Ukraine. In fiscal year 2023 alone, the United States provided about $16.6 billion in assistance to Ukraine, making it the top recipient of U.S. foreign aid that year. Most of this funding was used to strengthen Ukraine's defenses against ongoing attacks, including military equipment, weapons, and training for its troops. Beyond military aid, the U.S. government also gave economic and humanitarian assistance to help Ukraine's government function and support civilians affected by the war. This funding was aimed at stabilizing Ukraine's economy, keeping public services running, and aiding displaced citizens. The U.S. sees this support as critical for defending international law and helping independent nations facing aggression. By assisting Ukraine, the U.S. hopes to prevent further land grabs by hostile nations and promote stability in Eastern Europe. This approach reflects a broader U.S. goal of maintaining global order and preventing conflicts that could have worldwide consequences. That's all for today. You now know which nations receive the most money from the U.S. and how recent changes affect them. What do you think? Should the U.S. continue providing aid to these countries? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell.